She closed her eyes because there was nothing left to see. No sky. No stars. No future. Only the sound of alien machinery counting down her last breath. She accepted death in silence. And then she felt a hand, warm, human, wrapped tightly around hers. The chamber was designed to break hope. Cold metal walls curved inward like ribs, glowing with faint red symbols that pulsed in time with the life monitors. Lyra Vesh lay restrained at the center, her body barely rising as she struggled to breathe. Her species was not built for this gravity, this air, this cruelty. Every muscle trembled. Every nerve burned. The aliens watching her did not care. To them, she was not a person. She was a resource. Lyra was the last remaining Carthian archivist, one of the few beings in the galaxy capable of storing living star maps inside the mind. Her people carried knowledge not in machines, but in memory, memories woven with emotion, instinct, and choice. That made them dangerous. And valuable. The Varkul Imperium had spent weeks tearing those memories out of her piece by piece. Not to learn. Not to understand. But to control. They wanted to turn Carthian knowledge into a weapon. Lyra had resisted as long as she could. Now her strength was gone. A tall Varkul overseer stepped forward, its four eyes narrowing as data streamed across a floating screen. Neural collapse is imminent, it said in a flat, synthetic tone. Subject usefulness has ended. Lyra heard the words but felt nothing. Pain had faded into numbness. Fear had burned itself out. Even anger was gone. So she did the only thing left. She let go. Her eyes closed slowly. Her breathing faltered. In her mind, she returned to her homeworld, the soft gold light of twin suns, the sound of children singing memory songs in the wind. She prepared herself for the dark. That was when the alarm screamed. Red light flooded the chamber. The Varkul turned in sharp confusion as the sealed door exploded inward with a burst of sparks and smoke. Move! 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 The voice was loud. Rough. Human. Boots hit the floor. Gunfire echoed. Something heavy crashed against metal. Lyra did not open her eyes. She thought this must be the hallucination that came before death. Then something touched her hand. Not cold metal. Not a restraint. Fingers. Warm. Shaking. Real. Hey, don't check out on me now, the voice said, close, urgent. I didn't blow half a corridor just to be late. Her fingers were too weak to move, but she felt pressure, someone squeezing her hand like they were afraid to let go. Lyra's eyes fluttered open. Above her was a human face smeared with soot and blood, eyes wide with focus and fear. He looked young. Tired. Determined in a way that felt unfamiliar to her. You're alive, he said, almost laughing. Okay. Good. That's very good. Around them, chaos unfolded. Two Varkul guards lay unmoving. Another fired wildly before being dropped by a precise shot from the human's rifle. Smoke filled the air. Lyra tried to speak. Only a broken sound escaped. That's fine, he said quickly. Save your energy. Talking is optional. Living is not. He moved fast, cutting through her restraints with a handheld torch. Sparks flew as the metal snapped open. When her body sagged, he caught her without hesitation. She expected pain. Instead, she felt safety. He pulled her into his arms with surprising gentleness, shielding her with his own body as another explosion rocked the room. Lyra felt his heart pounding against her chest. Name's Callan, he said between breaths. Human Expeditionary Unit. And today's objective is simple, get you out alive. The Varkul overseer screeched, raising a weapon. Callan turned and fired once. The shot was clean. Final. Silence fell, broken only by alarms and Lyra's uneven breathing. Callan adjusted his grip and stood. She was lighter than she expected, fragile as glass. He cursed under his breath, not at her, but at the world that had done this. Hold on, he murmured. I've got you. They moved through burning corridors and collapsing halls. The station shook as human explosives tore through critical systems. Lyra drifted in and out of awareness, anchored only by the steady presence of the human carrying her. She had never seen humans up close before. Her people spoke of them carefully. Unpredictable. Emotional. Dangerous in ways no algorithm could predict. Now she understood why. Callan did not stop when his shoulder bled. He did not slow when the gravity shifted violently. He did not hesitate when enemy fire chased them through the maintenance tunnels. He adapted. When a door sealed, he rewired it. When a passage collapsed, he climbed. When his weapon overheated, he used the environment. Human ingenuity in motion. At one point, they were pinned down by automated turrets. Lyra felt Callan tense. "Okay," he muttered. "This is going to be stupid." He grabbed a loose power conduit, jammed it into the floor panel, and overloaded the entire section. The lights exploded. The turrets fried. The path cleared. Lyra stared weakly at him. He noticed. What? It worked. They reached the hangar just as a small human transport roared to life. Another human waved frantically from the cockpit. "You're late," the pilot shouted. Callan grinned. "I brought a guest." He carried Lyra aboard and secured her gently into a medical seat. The ship lifted off under heavy fire, narrowly escaping the station as it began to tear itself apart. As the stars stretched into motion, Lyra finally felt something she hadn't in a very long time. Relief. Callan collapsed into a seat nearby, breathing hard. He looked over at her, his expression softening. "You're safe now," he said. "We won't let them touch you again. I promise." Lyra gathered the last of her strength and turned her head toward him. Her voice was faint, but clear. "Why?" she asked. Callan blinked. "Why what? Why risk your life, for me?" He considered the question for a moment. Then he shrugged. "Because some lines shouldn't exist," he said simply. "And humans are very good at crossing them." Lyra closed her eyes again, but this time, not to die. This time, to rest. And somewhere deep inside her shattered mind, the ancient Carthian memory songs began to stir once more. Not as weapons, but as hope. Lyra woke to the steady hum of a ship that did not hate her. For a moment, she thought she was still in the Varkul chamber. Her body expected straps. Her mind expected the sharp sting of scanners digging for secrets. But when she opened her eyes, she saw soft ceiling panels, human design, ugly, practical, and somehow comforting. A thin blanket covered her. The air smelled like metal, oil, and something warm, like coffee. She tried to sit up. Pain flared through her ribs, and she hissed. "Easy," a voice said from the doorway. Callan stepped in, one hand holding a small cup of water, the other holding a med patch. His face looked worse in clean light, cuts across his cheek, bruises under his eyes, and the exhausted look of someone who had been running on stubbornness alone. "You've been out," he said. "Long enough for me to argue with our pilot 3 times, lose twice, and win once by pretending I didn't care." Lyra blinked slowly. "Where am I?" "Human courier ship," he said. "Old model. Loud engines. Questionable life support. But it flies. That's what matters." He came closer and crouched beside her. He offered the water first. Lyra accepted it with shaking hands, sipping carefully. Her throat burned, but the water helped. It was real. It was gentle. She almost didn't know how to handle gentle anymore. Callan peeled open the med patch and pressed it onto her shoulder. A cool numbness spread through the pain. "We can't go to a human base yet," he said, quieter now. "The Varkul have eyes everywhere. They'll track us if we take the obvious route." Lyra's gaze sharpened. "They will come." "Oh, they're already trying," a new voice called from the cockpit. The pilot leaned back into view. She was human too, older than Callan, with short hair and a hard stare that looked like it had seen too much and survived anyway. She lifted a finger in greeting without turning fully around. "I'm Sergeant Mara Holt," she said. "I fly. I complain. I keep idiots alive." Callan frowned. "I'm not an idiot." Mara snorted. You broke into a Varkul black site with a two-person team and no exit plan. Callan lifted his hands. I had a plan. It was called Run Very Fast. Lyra watched them, confused by the strange rhythm of human fear and humor mixed together. They spoke like people who had already accepted the worst, so they didn't let the worst control them. Mara tapped her console, and the ship rattled as it shifted course. Outside the narrow window, stars slid by like cold sparks. Bad news, Mara said. They tagged the station wreckage with a tracking net. They know something escaped. It's only a matter of time before they guess who. Callan glanced at Lyra. They'll guess right. Lyra swallowed. Her mind felt like cracked glass, but memory still lived inside her. She could feel it, layered, deep, humming beneath her thoughts like a song trapped behind a wall. They want what I carry, she said. And they will kill anyone near me. Callan's jaw tightened. Then we make sure they don't get close. Mara gave him a sideways look. That's inspiring. Now tell me how we do that with a ship that screams its location every time I breathe on the throttle. Callan leaned forward, eyes sharp. We don't run like prey. Mara raised a brow. Oh no. We go somewhere they don't expect, Callan said. Somewhere that breaks their logic. Lyra studied him. What place breaks Varkul logic? Callan hesitated, then smiled like someone about to do something dangerous on purpose. A junkyard, he said. Mara groaned. Of course. Of course that's your answer. Lyra didn't understand, but she felt the shift in the air. Humans were not simply reacting anymore. They were choosing. Hours passed. Lyra drifted in and out of sleep, but this time, sleep was not a fall into darkness. It was a slow return of strength. When she woke again, the ship had slowed. The stars outside were blocked by scattered shadows, floating debris, broken hulls, torn engines, and scraps of 1,000 dead ships spinning in silent orbit. Mara's voice came over the cabin speaker. Welcome to Grave Belt 7. Galaxy's ugliest trash heap. Callan helped Lyra sit up, steadying her. This place used to be a battlefield. Now it's a black market. Varkul hate it. Too chaotic. Too many unknowns. Lyra looked out at the drifting wreckage. You hide here. No, Callan said. We hunt here. The ship slid between broken cruisers and smashed cargo containers, moving like a thief. Signals buzzed outside, strange pings, encrypted messages, the quiet chatter of scavengers. Mara brought them toward a dock bolted to the side of a half-dead carrier ship. It looked impossible that anyone could live here. Yet lights flickered, and the dock clamps engaged with a solid thud. Callan strapped on his rifle and a pack. Mara checked her pistol. Then both looked at Lyra. You can stay aboard, Mara said. It's safer. Lyra stared at the floor for a long moment. Then she forced herself to stand. Her legs shook, but she held herself upright. No, she said. They will come for me. I will not be cargo again. Callan nodded once, respectful. Then you stay close. They stepped onto the dock, and the air changed. It was thick with grease, smoke, and the smell of hot metal. Voices echoed through broken hallways. Alien languages mixed with human slang. Machines clanged. Somewhere, someone laughed too loudly. Lyra kept her hood up, moving between Callan and Mara. A large figure approached from the shadows, tall and broad, wearing armor made from mismatched ship plates. Its face was hidden behind a visor. It walked with calm confidence, like this wrecked place belonged to it. Mara lifted her chin. We're looking for a mechanic. Someone who can make a ship disappear. The figure paused, then lifted its visor. It was human. A woman with oil-stained hands, sharp eyes, and a scar that cut through her eyebrow like a warning. She looked Callan up and down, then looked at Lyra. Bringing trouble? She asked. Callan met her stare. Always. The woman exhaled, like she was tired of being surprised by humans doing human things. Name's Sablecade, she said. I fix ships. I also fix problems. Both cost. Mara jerked a thumb toward Callan. He pays. I complain. Sable's gaze stayed on Lyra. That one doesn't look like a normal passenger. Lyra felt exposed, but she held her ground. I am not normal, she said. Sable's eyes narrowed. Then she smiled, not kind, but interested. Good. Normal gets you killed out here. Callan leaned in, voice low. We're being hunted. Varkul level. Sable's smile vanished. She looked past them into the dark corridors, as if she could already see danger moving toward them. Then you're late, she said. Mara's hand went to her pistol. Late for what? Sable's voice dropped to a whisper. Because Varkul drones just entered Gravebelt 7, she said. And they're scanning every dock. Lyra's blood turned cold. Callan didn't flinch. He only stepped forward, eyes burning with a human kind of calm. Then, he said, we stop being the ones running. Outside, somewhere in the wreckage, metallic wings screamed as drones moved in. Lyra felt the memory songs inside her stir, like they recognized the coming storm. Humans didn't have her songs. They didn't have her codes. But they had something else. They had the ability to look at impossible odds, and decide the odds were wrong. The first explosion echoed through Gravebelt 7 like a warning bell. Metal screamed. Lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the wreckage, something old and unstable finally gave up. Lyra felt it through the floor, through her bones. The memory songs inside her stirred harder now, reacting not with fear, but recognition. The Varkul had arrived. They're not being subtle, Mara muttered, drawing her weapon. They never are, Sable said, already moving. They don't hunt. They erase. From the broken docking ring above them, 3 Varkul drones descended, their segmented bodies unfolding like mechanical insects. Blue scanning beams cut through smoke and shadow, washing over scrap, walls, and people. Wherever the beams touched, alarms chimed softly. Lyra's chest tightened. She could feel the scanners brushing against her mind, testing, searching. Callan noticed instantly. He stepped in front of her without thinking. Eyes on me, he whispered. Whatever happens, don't run unless I say. She looked at him. If they find me. They won't, he said. Not loudly. Not bravely. Just certain. The first drone turned toward them. Before it could lock on, Sable lifted a heavy tool and threw it with brutal precision. The spinning mass smashed into the drone's sensor cluster. It sparked, screeched, and slammed into the wall, twitching. Move! Sable shouted. Everything exploded into motion. Mara fired 2 clean shots, hitting a drone joint and sending it spiraling into a pile of wreckage. Callan grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her down a side corridor as return fire lit the air behind them. The corridor was narrow and twisted, patched together from parts that never belonged. Pipes leaked steam. Loose wires snapped like angry insects. The floor tilted at an angle that made Lyra dizzy. They're herding us, Mara shouted from behind. They know the layout now. No, Callan said, skidding to a stop. They think they do. He yanked open a wall panel and revealed a mess of cables and half-dead systems. Lyra stared. That is not a path. It is if you're human, he said, already ripping wires free. Sparks flew. The lights dimmed. The corridor shook as gravity hiccuped and shifted sideways for half a second. The drones slammed into the corridor entrance just as the floor dropped out beneath them. Lyra screamed as the world flipped. Then Callan wrapped one arm around her and slammed a control lever down with the other. A hidden lift platform caught them mid-fall and dropped them through the wreckage like a stone through water. They landed hard in a lower bay filled with broken fighters and rusted hulls. Lyra lay there, stunned, breathing fast. Callan coughed and laughed once, sharp and breathless. Okay. That worked better than expected. Mara dropped down after them, rolling to her feet. You are never allowed to say that sentence again. Sable landed last, steady as if gravity had always been optional for her. The drones followed. 4 of them this time, tearing through debris, adapting fast. Their beams shifted frequency, slicing through cover. One beam grazed Lyra's shoulder. Pain flared, and something answered it. The memory songs surged. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. The air around her vibrated faintly, like a distant chord being struck. Callan turned. "Lyra." "I didn't mean to," she said, panic in her voice. "They're pulling at the songs." One drone froze mid-air. Its system stuttered, lights flickering out of sync. Mara stared. "Did she just?" "Yes," Sable said quietly. "She did." The Varkul adapted instantly. The frozen drone detonated itself, blasting the bay with shrapnel. Humans hit the ground. Lyra screamed as debris slammed around them. When the smoke cleared, Callan was already moving. He grabbed a fallen power core, slammed it into a broken fighter's engine mount, and ripped open a fuel line. "Cover me," he shouted. Mara didn't ask questions. She fired. Sable fired. Metal screamed as drones took hits and kept coming. Callan jammed the power core in, crossed two exposed cables, and slammed his boot down. The fighter's engine screamed to life. Not cleanly. Not safely. But power surged through the bay. The drone's targeting systems went wild as electromagnetic noise flooded the space. Their beams scattered. Their coordination broke. Lyra felt it again, that strange resonance between her songs and human chaos. The humans weren't controlling the energy. They were provoking it. "Now!" Callan yelled. Lyra didn't think. She reached inward, past pain and fear, and released a single, incomplete note from her memory song. It wasn't a weapon. It was a question. The bay vibrated. Systems across the wreckage responded unpredictably. Doors slammed shut. Gravity reversed for a heartbeat. Old defense turrets, long dead, twitched awake and fired blindly. The drones were torn apart by a storm of broken systems and human improvisation. Silence followed, heavy and stunned. Lyra collapsed to her knees, shaking. Callan caught her before she hit the floor. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. She nodded weakly. "I did not know humans fought like this." He smiled, tired and fierce. "Neither did the galaxy." Sable looked at the wreckage, then at Lyra. "They will come back. Stronger." Mara reloaded. "Good. Now they know we bite." Lyra looked at them, these fragile, reckless beings who had no ancient songs, no encoded histories, no perfect plans. Only will. Only creativity. Only refusal. For the first time since her capture, she understood something clearly. The Varkul feared humans not because they were stronger. They feared them because humans turned every disadvantage into a weapon. Lyra lifted her head, eyes glowing faintly. "If they want my songs," she said, voice steady now, "then I will choose how they are used." Callan met her gaze. "Welcome to humanity's favorite tradition." "What is that?" He grinned. "Making the enemy regret their decisions." Far above them, Varkul command ships adjusted their formation, recalculating. They were no longer hunting a victim. They were facing a problem. And problems were what humans solved best. The Varkul did not retreat. They reorganized. High above Gravebelt 7, their command vessels shifted formation with mechanical precision. Drones pulled back, replaced by heavier units. Signal patterns changed. Frequencies adjusted. The Imperium did not feel anger or fear the way organic minds did, but it recognized resistance. And resistance had to be erased properly. Down in the wreckage, Lyra felt the change before anyone said a word. The memory songs inside her vibrated differently now, tense, warning her like a tightening string. "They are learning," she said quietly. Mara glanced up at the flickering scanners on her wrist display. "Yeah. And I don't like the look of what they're learning." Sable was already moving, barking orders to unseen figures deeper in the junkyard. Hidden doors opened. Old systems powered up. Scrap cranes groaned into motion. "This place wasn't built for a stand-up fight," Sable said. "But it was built by people who didn't like being told where they could exist." Callan helped Lyra to her feet. She swayed, but she stayed upright. Every instinct told her to hide, to preserve what little strength she had left. But humans didn't hide knowledge. They used it. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Callan hesitated for half a second, then decided. "Teach us how they listen." Lyra closed her eyes and reached inward. The songs responded, unfolding in layers. Not words. Not images. Patterns. Harmonics. She spoke slowly, choosing simple meaning. "The Varkul do not hear sound," she said. "They read resonance. Energy patterns. Predictable order." Mara's eyes lit up. "So, noise." Sable smiled thinly. "Lots of it." The next hour was chaos, but human chaos, the kind that turned scrap into strategy. Sable's people rewired broken hulls into signal reflectors. Mara rigged old mining charges into timed electromagnetic bursts. Callan moved between them, solving problems that didn't have instructions, making choices no simulation would recommend. Lyra watched, then joined in. She adjusted frequencies, not to amplify power, but to introduce uncertainty. She sang not complete songs, but fragments, unfinished questions that rippled through systems and confused Varkul sensors. Above them, the first heavy units descended. Varkul enforcers were larger than drones, armored like walking fortresses, their weapons designed to erase targets cleanly and efficiently. They advanced without hesitation, beams cutting through debris, step by step. The first charge detonated early, on purpose. An electromagnetic pulse ripped through the bay, knocking out 3 enforcers' coordination. Old ship engines flared to life and exploded in chain reactions. Scrap storms filled the air. The Varkul adapted. They always did. But adaptation took time. And humans were very good at buying time. Callan sprinted across a tilted hull plate as fire chased him, slid behind cover, and tossed a magnetic clamp into an exposed joint. The clamp latched. Sable triggered the overload. The enforcer's own power core tore it apart from the inside. Mara took a hit to the leg, swore loudly, and kept firing. Lyra felt herself being pulled again, harder now. The Varkul command units had locked onto her resonance directly. Pain flared behind her eyes. Callan reached her instantly. "Hey! Stay with me." "They're focusing on me," she said through clenched teeth. "I can't block them much longer." Callan looked around, at the burning wreckage, at the humans still fighting, at the impossible odds. Then he made a very human decision. "Good," he said. "Then we let them focus." Mara snapped her head toward him. "I don't like where that sentence is going." Callan keyed his comm all units, shift pattern. "We're changing the board." Sable understood immediately. "You're serious." "Dead serious." They moved Lyra to the center of the bay, onto the remains of an old Carthian research vessel, one that had been captured decades ago and discarded. The irony did not escape her. Callan climbed onto the hull beside her. "Lyra," he said, voice steady. "Can you do something big?" She met his eyes. "Yes. But it will expose everything I am." He nodded. "Then we'll stand where they can see us." The Varkul enforcers turned as one, weapons locking on. Lyra began to sing. Not a weapon song. Not a memory song. A declaration. The resonance spread outward, incomplete by design. It carried confusion, contradiction, choice. Varkul systems strained to interpret it, and failed. Their sensors overloaded, trying to force meaning where humans thrived in chaos. At Callan's signal, everything else triggered. Mining charges detonated in irregular sequence. Reflectors bent targeting beams back on their sources. Old defense grids woke up screaming and fired at anything that moved. The bay became a storm. The Varkul enforcers fell one by one, not because humans overpowered them, but because the battlefield no longer made sense. Then the command ship fired. A clean, devastating beam cut through the upper structure, collapsing half the bay. Lyra cried out as the song shattered inside her. Callan was thrown hard, slamming into debris. For a moment, everything went quiet. Dust settled. Callan coughed, forcing himself upright. His vision blurred, but he saw Lyra still standing, shaking, bleeding, but unbroken. Above them, the command ship adjusted for a second strike. Mara dragged herself into view, blood on her uniform. "Callan, we're out of tricks." Callan looked at the wreckage, at the humans who had chosen to fight anyway. Then he smiled. "No," he said. "We're just out of polite options." He activated a final switch Sable had warned him never to touch. Every unstable reactor core, power cell, and engine fragment across Gravebelt 7 lit up at once. Lyra felt the resonance surge, not controlled, not clean, but alive. The humans weren't trying to win a battle anymore. They were changing the equation. The command ship fired. And the junkyard answered. A wave of cascading detonations ripped through space, not in a single blast, but in millions of small, unpredictable reactions. The command ship's shields failed under the strain of chaos. Its systems collapsed trying to compensate. When the light faded, the command ship was gone. Silence returned. Breathing. Smoke. Survivors. Lyra fell to her knees. Callan reached her just in time. "You did it," he said softly. She shook her head. "No. We did." Above them, the remaining Varkul forces withdrew. Not defeated, but warned. For the first time in galactic record, the Imperium had encountered something it could not fully predict. Humanity. And the song Lyra carried no longer belonged to one species. It had become a shared defiance. The stars were quiet in the aftermath. Gravebelt 7 drifted in silence, its fires fading into glowing embers that slowly cooled against the black. Broken ships floated like ancient bones, reminders of battles long forgotten, until now. The Varkul Imperium had withdrawn, not because they were defeated completely, but because something far worse had happened. They had failed to understand. Lyra sat against a twisted section of hull plating, her breathing shallow but steady. Her body felt hollow, as if parts of her had been burned away along with the song she released. Yet she was alive. Truly alive. Callan sat beside her, one arm braced, the other resting loosely near her shoulder, as if unsure whether to pull away or stay close. His armor was scorched. His hands shook now that the danger had passed. "You scared the galaxy today," he said quietly. Lyra managed a faint smile. "I believe your species enjoys doing that." Mara approached, limping heavily but upright. Blood stained her leg, but her eyes were sharp. "Still fighting. Varkul fleet is retreating beyond sensor range," she said. "No pursuit. No counterstrike." Sable joined them, helmet under her arm, face marked with soot and exhaustion. She looked around the wreckage she called home and nodded once. "They'll remember this place," she said. "And they'll remember who made it hurt." Lyra turned her gaze toward the stars. "They will come again." Callan didn't deny it. "Yeah. Eventually. But not the same way," Lyra said. "Not with certainty." She closed her eyes, not in surrender this time, but in listening. The memory songs inside her were changed. Fractured. No longer perfect Carthian harmonics passed cleanly through her mind. In their place was something unstable, something human. Improvisation. Emotion. Choice. "My people believed knowledge must be preserved exactly as it was," she said softly. "We feared change would corrupt it." Callan picked up a small piece of wreckage and turned it in his fingers. "Humans believe if knowledge doesn't change, it dies." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "That is why the Varkul fear you." Mara snorted weakly. "Good. Let them." Rescue signals began to echo through the sector, human codes this time. Reinforcements were coming. Med ships. Engineers. People who would clean up the mess and ask too many questions. Sable straightened. Gravebelt won't stay hidden after this. It never does once humans show up. Lyra felt a strange sadness. This place had been chaos and danger, but also choice. Humanity thrived in places like this. "What will happen to me?" she asked. Callan answered without hesitation. "You'll be protected. We'll move you between worlds if we have to. The Varkul won't get you. That is not what I mean, Lyra said. She met his eyes. What will I become? The question hung heavy between them. Lyra was no longer only Carthian. The songs inside her had merged with human unpredictability. She could no longer be used the way the Imperium wanted, but she also could not return to her people unchanged. Callan stood and offered his hand. You become someone who decides, he said. She looked at his hand. The first time she had felt a human's touch, she was ready to die. Now she took it willingly. As rescue ships docked and medics rushed forward, Lyra was guided aboard a human vessel, not as cargo, not as a secret, but as an ally. Scientists would study carefully. Commanders would argue. Diplomats would panic. But humanity had already made its choice. They would not give her up. Weeks later, far from Gravebelt 7, the Varkul Imperium convened in silence. Their simulations replayed the battle again and again. Each time, the outcome diverged. Too many variables. Too many irrational decisions. One conclusion repeated across all models. Humanity could not be contained. They did not fight to dominate. They fought to protect. And that made them dangerous. On a quiet human outpost near the edge of known space, Lyra stood beneath an artificial sky. She watched children run beneath projected clouds, laughing in a dozen languages. No guards stood nearby. No scanners probed her mind. Callan joined her, hands in his pockets. You could leave, he said. Plenty of places would take you. She shook her head slowly. I will stay. With humans. With choice, she replied. She lifted her hand, letting a new kind of song ripple outward. Not a weapon, not a code, but a story. One that carried memory, loss, courage, and something dangerously hopeful. The humans who heard it didn't try to control it. They listened. Far across the galaxy, Varkul sensors trembled as the resonance touched them. Imperfect, unpredictable, alive. The Imperium marked the signal with a warning classification it had never used before. Uncontainable variable detected. Lyra smiled. Once, she had closed her eyes, ready to die. Now, when she looked at the future, she saw something far more terrifying to the enemies of humanity. Possibility. And humanity stood at its center, not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the most advanced, but the one that refused to let the universe decide who mattered. The end.